Beautiful ladies and gentlemen, I am so thrilled to see you. Oh god. Now, you might look awfully good today, but I look awfully fucking in a jacket today. So, yeah, it's a Minecraft jacket, because there are other crafts that are equally as rocking as, I would dare say, a game like Starcraft. Especially if it makes me look this good. Welcome to Day 9 Daily number 537, where we learn to be a better gamer and look fine as hell. In today's daily, we are doing the first of 3 episodes in a row on none other than White Ra, everyone's favorite Ra, unless perhaps you're a fan of Stargate. In these dailies, we're going to be exploring Protoss vs. Zerg today, and then Protoss vs. Terran tomorrow, and Protoss vs. Protoss on the 3rd day, in Heart of the Swarm, because White Ra has been one of the most prolific Heart of the Swarmers, and we're going to be looking at new openings in PvZ and thinking about how they're structured, so that you can steal them. That's the brief introduction. Let me just say, once again, this jacket. Oh god, everyone's talking about the jacket, and one guy's like, oh, SG-1's my favorite Stargate. Wow! I like Stargate Universe a lot, I'm not gonna lie. The actor whose name I should know, who plays the doctor, he's great. He is amazing when he gets killed in the 28 Units of Time Later series. 28 days later and 28 weeks later. What do you call? I call it the 28 Units of Time Later series. Do you like how I explained my joke just in case you didn't get it? That's a good way to kill a joke. Let's do the daily. First of all, Funday Monday will be coming back next week. And for any of you who do not know the procedure, it is where you play under a certain constraint that I'm about to say, and you submit replays of me playing under said constraint. You submit it to me via Monday at day9.tv. I would like you to submit to me games of you, Heart of the Swarmers, playing, where you may only build units that are either new Heart of the Swarm units or have new upgrades and special neat stuff and effects in Heart of the Swarm. So things like the Hydralisk, yeah, totally works in there. In addition to these two, because I am kind and gentle, you may also pick one other Wings of Liberty unit to build. Heart of the Swarm units, things that got changed in Heart of the Swarm, like Reapers and Hydras, and then one other unit of your choice. You may publicly announce that at the start of the game. Isn't that fun? Workers, build as many workers as you want. Observers, that's fine. You can build observers. You can build overlords, overseers, queens. As many queens as you want is fine. All that's fine. Build as many workers as you want. That would be fun. It wouldn't be called Funday Monday if you couldn't build workers. It would actually just be called Monday. Isn't that sad? There's also something that I want to note about the special awesomeness of Monday. For any of you who don't know, there is the voluntary Day 9 subscription program, whereby if you would like, you may support the Day 9 dailies with a $5 a month contribution. There are things like the subscriber Mana Battles, that if you are a subscriber, you have the chance to play in some Mana Battles with me. But we want to make things a little more structured this year. So in 2013, about every other Monday, you will wake up with some gift if you are a subscriber to the Day 9 Dailies. The upcoming gift is going to be a free key to an indie game that I really like, called Marvin's Mittens. I think it's brilliant. It's totally childlike and exploratory and reminds me of a Banjo-Kazooie, except there's no lives. You just have fun exploring and jumping around. Or if you've ever heard of Niflis's game, Knit or Knit, totally love that. But yeah, things like free game keys or just cute... I'm trying to figure out a way to get a free gift card to Donuts and to send those out somehow. But yeah, so you're going to be getting some emailed gifty if you're a subscriber about every other Monday. Sound fun, right? Cool. I drink my ice water with a pinky. Now on to some Starcraft stuff. Screw all that fun announcement. It's good to be back. We'll talk about Funday Monday at the end. Let's talk about openings and build orders and all that good stuff. Once upon a time, Wings of Liberty was the new thing coming out. I was but a wee StarCraft 1 player, and StarCraft 2 Beta was on the cusp of being released sometime in February 2010. And even though I didn't really know any of the units in StarCraft 2, and similar to some of you who don't have beta keys, you don't really know what the experience is like of some of the new things. Maybe you have some knowledge, but by and large it's kind of scary and creepy, and it opens everything up into craziness. So we're going to be looking at White Raw doing a variety of different opening build orders. Therefore, thusly, we can examine things like what the strengths are in his build based upon timings that we know that his opponent is capable of. We're going to be talking about things like what to do with resources. Because if we're doing something that's very gas heavy and it leaves our minerals open, what do we do with that? And we're also going to be looking at this idea of if we elect to go down one path, what does that necessarily lead us to do? Because build orders do have this tendency to do things where you say, I want to open Stargate. That's the decision that you make. You had the freedom to not go Stargate, but you elected to go Stargate. And that immediately, therefore, means that you must, for instance, build a Void Ray in this situation. You couldn't go for an Immortal because you just don't have enough time. We're going to be looking at a lot of that. So we're going to start things off with a very simple game, and we're going to be looking at, the goal is 5 games today. We're going to be looking at a very simple game that shows not a lot of use of the new units, but is still a very, very new build order, thanks largely in part to the Mothership Core. Largely in part to the Mothership Core. Oh, yes. So there's White Raw spawning down there in the bottom right position. And Trickbow's like, my god, real White Raw. And White Raw, being the ever-mannered gentleman that he is, says, yeah. Now, we're going to start noting things right off the bat with, like, scout timings and some of our long-term goals. But I want to note right off the bat, the reason we're starting with Zerg in this 3-part special on White Raw. The reason we're starting with Zerg is that Zerg doesn't really have anything new that they can do in Heart of the Swarm in the first 10 minutes of the game. There's really nothing new that Zerg has until you get to Lair, where you can get the Hydralisk speed upgrades, Locusts, and then eventually Hive for Vipers, so on and so forth. As a result, this allows my job to be a little bit easier. That's why we're starting off on this. Yeah. So, we're also going to be noting a lot about what White Raw is seeing and what we can get away with. It's very easy, for instance, to think of a build order in terms of what can I do to him, but White Raw is very good at doing a what can he not do to me when it comes to this early scouting. So we're in the early scouting. We haven't seen anything. No mass air, okay? That stuff's OP as hell. So White Raw has scouted in here. What has he seen? He's seen no pool. He also has seen no expansion. But most importantly, no pool, no early rushes. White Raw, therefore, is comfortable going Nexus first. And aha! Sees this spawning pool as well. And this is a very typically timed spawning pool. A spawning pool that finishes around 3 minutes is considered normal. So White Raw is going to go Nexus and Forge. Alright, nothing too out of the ordinary. Speeding it up. Holding this, Watchtower, so far so good. Getting the gateway, having the photon cannon. Now, many of you probably know that around when you should be checking for these other bases is around 4:30. We don't want to be goof-brained dork heads and assume our opponent is necessarily doing a certain thing. We don't want to assume he's going for the 3 hatch, even though that's common. So right away, White Raw kind of gets that, oh my god, my opponent is actually not going for 3 base. White Raw smartly tries to poke up here and get some more information. Meanwhile, back home, standard taking of the 2 assimilators, building of a precautionary zealot. There might be some sort of bust coming up early. And of course, building of the cybernetics core, so that way we can get our mothership core. But yeah, White Raw does this ring around the rosy. No gas, no gas, no gas. Again, just to show that, just in case you're thinking I'm talking of a time other than literally 10 seconds ago. No gas, no gas, no gas. Okay, cool. So it's very unlikely that our opponent is going for some sort of gas-based attack. So this is where White Raw has effectively crossed out a lot of early aggression. I should say a lot of hyper early all-in type stuff. There still could be early aggression. So let's look at the build that we see White Raw do. There's 2 things I'm going to note right now. There's an opening build, and then there is a little tactic I want to talk about. Most of the daily is going to be about builds, but also the tactics are pretty sweet. 4 gateways. coming up. Stoink. A nice little tactic is having the Stalker plus Mothership Core, because you can shut down and get control over things like Xel'Naga Watchtowers. Alright, we're going to speed things up to ×4. White Rod does a nice little scout move with this Mothership Core, sees that it is indeed a 3-hatch play, just kind of a slow 3-hatch play, and White Rod right away takes a Nexus. Ordinarily, this is terrible, right? This is by and large bad. You will die right now. Unless you have vision of what he's doing and he's told you, look dude, I don't believe in attacking other people. Why does this work? Because we can turn... where is it? We can turn our Nexus into a gigantic cannon with photon overcharge. So this is the basic structure of the build, opening up with these 4 gateways that I can actually select there, and doing this early expand, of course, with sentries. Now, thus far, I've just been talking a little bit about what White Ra has seen. He's seen no all-ins, no big, crazy aggression, so he's going to early expand. We're around 9 minutes now. This is where things are going to start to pop up. So I want to make some statements. What do we need to worry about our opponent doing? This is kind of coming back to what I said earlier. We have the freedom to do a lot of stuff. So we have elected to take an early expand. Very, very early third base. What do we have to worry about now? We're getting close to 10 minutes. We have to worry about very standard Wings of Liberty-esque, huge Roach with speed attacks, maybe some speed Zerglings. We have to worry about Mutalisks starting to come up around 10:30, 11 is when the Mutalisks would come up. Around 10 to 11 is when we start getting a Roach attacked. And also, in this new Heart of the Swarm world, we kind of have to start worrying about Hydralisks, because speed can pop up. Let's look at this very clever answer that we're going to see out of White Ra. I want you to think for a moment. What would you do now? You have 4 gateways. Actually, has White Ra research +1? Yeah, he has +1. You have 4 gateways. What would you do? Would you go for more gateways in a Twilight Council? Would you get 1 Robo in a Twilight Council and start building Immortals 1 at a time and get Blink and add on some gates? Would you go apeshit and build Stargates and Chrono Boost out a bunch of Void Rays because the Heart of the Swarm? There's certainly not just one answer for that, but I want to note how clever this is, what White Ra does. He actually goes double robotics facility. I want to think about that for a moment, because right now we're pretty gosh darn secure with our 4 gates against Zerglings, because we have sentries, zealots, and we can turn our nexuses into a giant damn cannon at any point with photon overcharge. This allows us to demolish a player who builds too many roaches, and it allows us to transition rapidly into Hydralisks. Interestingly, there's some very fast Hydralisk and Swarm Host builds that hit at around 12 or 13, and this allows us to have a sufficient Colossus count against that. So, and certainly we get this Twilight Council up for Blink, because nothing's bad about Blink. But White Ra naturally ends up doing a Hallucinated Phoenix, checking around, seeing what's up. Aha! A Spire. Great. Now, I will again note that Hydralisks, in a Wings of Liberty sense, no one would be like, oh, Hydralisks. I'm actually seeing the chat talk about it a lot. In Wings of Liberty, Hydralisks are not something that you worry about, because they're so damn slow, and you can cut them off with ease. But in Heart of the Swarm, they're turning out to be a real bitch. We'll see some of that later. I will just leave that in your head. Still, even if it's a mediocre strategy, you still have to account for it. And this double Robo does a quite interestingly good job of accounting for it. So sweet, we saw the Spire. Excellent. We're just going to transition right away into Colossus production, adding on additional gateways. And what we've seen out of White Ra is a pretty intuitive series of jumps to get to the position that he is at right now, which is essentially about to be pretty dang even with the Zerg and economy. Zerg does have this 4th base up, but 3 base Protoss against a 4 base, not very high-tech Zerg feels quite good for the Protoss. And of course, blasting out all the things. All the things. emphasizing gateways because we're up against a Mutalisking player. And, you know, we didn't quite end up using a lot, or we didn't end up using the Robos for the damage-dealing units like the Immortals and the Colossus, but against Mutalisks, we did get the ability to build a lot of Observers very quickly. One of the Observers is actually dead, but we got to get these Observers out very quickly to be spotters against the Mutalisks. So not an enormous amount of utility out of the second Robo, but against the aggressive layering player, he would have been pretty good. Here's an example of the defensive abilities of the Heart of the Swarm Protoss. Pretty sweet stuff. So this is where I want to slightly step forward in time, and we're actually just going to halt this replay a little while before it's finished. White Rod just does the usual kind of defensive setup with his Stalkers, getting his +3 up. He actually has +1 armor as well. And White Raw is very well poised at the 15-minute mark to do a timing push. Great. What have we seen? We've seen White Rod do a very simple build utilizing the Mothership core, and then do what would be some intuitive answers. They're intuitive because we're stopping to list out all the possibilities as to what Zerg could be doing when we hit that mid-game period. However, it's intuitive because we're listing out all the things that Zerg could be doing, and we're responding in a way that accounts for all that. A lot of people will look at what White Rod does and say, what the hell, double Robo? That doesn't seem very reasonable. But it's total. But again, people are not going for a third Nexus this quickly in this matchup, in this situation. That's a sort of new thing that happens at a Heart of the Swarm. So, yeah, and then he just built all the rest of his tech and ended up in excellent shape. One thing I want to note right now is that if you go to the website, day9.tv, where this is my website, as you might imagine, if you just click on this daily number 537, right now you'll see me, or you'll see the stream right there. But also, here's a link to the replays, because I know a lot of you will wonder what happens in the remainder of everything. So we'll be, if you just go to the website, whiteraw.com/replays. Here's all the replay packs. Here's the replay pack we're using right now, replays from these two, just so you know. Great. Nice. 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 So I'm just going to, you know what, screw it. Let's just end part one right now instead of splitting another replay in half and do a little bit of a recap. We started off by being excited because I'm wearing this jacket and because Funday Monday's coming back. There will be also a post on that on the website. Talked a little bit about treats coming up for the subscriber program. Yeah, like Marvin's Mittens, the indie game that I think is swag. Oh, I said it because YOLO. And then we looked at this game from White Raw, which was not crazy, did not use a ton of Heart of the Swarm units, just basically used the Mothership core. And then we did a lot of follow-up intuition for the play that kind of looked unusual, but was not... It looked unusual, but was still intuitive when we stopped to think about it. So that's where I wanted to start in this daily. We're going to be watching 4 more games. In the next one, we're going to look at White Rod doing something that would generally be defined as apeshit. But we're still going to see the idea of we're going to make a choice, and we're going to sort of naturally build and respond in a way that accounts for all the possibilities that our opponent could be throwing at us, even with all the new stuff in Heart of the Swarm. We'll be back with part 2 in 2 to 3 minutes.